Story 1. My name is Emily, and I'm a 17-year-old from a small town in New England. The town has a rich history, with tales of witch trials and haunted locations. One place that always piqued our interest was the old park on the outskirts of town. Locals claimed that it was cursed, and strange things happened to those who dared venture there at night. It was a Friday night, and my friends Sarah, Ashley, and I had just finished watching a horror movie at my house. We were bored and decided to test our bravery by visiting the park after midnight. We lived in a safe community, so our parents never worried about us being out late. We arrived at the park around 12:30 a.m., the moon casting eerie shadows on the playground. The air was thick with the scent of decaying leaves and damp earth. As we walked around, we noticed that the park seemed to have an oppressive atmosphere, making us feel uneasy. Sarah dared us to walk through the small wooded area that separated the park from the town cemetery. We hesitated but ultimately agreed, trying to prove our courage. As we entered the woods, the temperature seemed to drop, and we could see our breath in the cold air. Halfway through the woods, we heard footsteps behind us. We turned around, but there was nobody there. The footsteps continued, growing closer and louder. Panicking, we broke into a run, desperately trying to reach the other side. As we emerged from the woods, we found ourselves not in the cemetery, but back in the park. We were disoriented and frightened, unsure of how we had gotten back there. In the distance, we spotted a figure sitting on a swing, her face obscured by her long hair. We approached the figure slowly, intending to ask if she needed help. As we got closer, she looked up, revealing black, empty eyes and a mouth twisted into a malicious grin. We screamed and ran, never looking back. We never went to that park again, and the memory of that night still haunts us. Story 2. My name is Amy, and I am a 19-year-old college student. I grew up in a small town in the Midwest, where my parents still live. During my summer break, I came home to visit my family and catch up with my friends, especially my childhood best friend, Lily. One night, Lily suggested we visit the old park in town, where we had spent countless hours playing as kids. We hadn't been there in years, so we decided it would be a fun and nostalgic trip. We grabbed our flashlights and headed to the park around 11 p.m. The park was quiet and deserted, the only sounds coming from the rustling leaves and the occasional hoot of an owl. We explored the familiar playground, reminiscing about our childhood adventures. As we approached the park's pond, we noticed something odd. There, floating just above the water's surface, was a ghostly figure of a young girl in a white dress. She seemed to be weeping softly. Terrified, we froze in our tracks, not daring to move. The girl looked up at us, her eyes filled with sorrow. Before we could react, she disappeared beneath the water's surface. We hesitated, unsure of what to do, and then we heard a faint, desperate cry for help. Without thinking, we waded into the pond, searching for the girl, but we found nothing. We left the park, shaken and bewildered. The next day, we did some research and discovered that a young girl had drowned in that pond decades ago. We can't explain what we saw that night, but we believe her spirit is still trapped there, searching for help or perhaps closure. In the following weeks, Lily and I became obsessed with the girl's story. We dug through old newspapers, visited the local library, and even talked to some of the town's elderly residents. We learned that her name was Abigail, and she had been only 9 years old when she drowned in the pond. Her death had been ruled an accident, but rumors persisted that there was more to the story. We decided to return to the park one more time, hoping to communicate with Abigail's spirit and maybe find some answers. Armed with a digital voice recorder, we ventured back to the pond on a moonlit night. We stood at the water's edge and called out to Abigail, asking her to share her story with us. At first, we heard nothing but the gentle lapping of water against the shore. Then, a faint whisper filled the air, sending chills down our spines. We couldn't make out what it said, but we knew it was her. We asked more questions, each time hearing the same soft, almost inaudible whisper. Frustrated, we decided to leave and review the recordings, hoping they would reveal more than our ears could hear. When we played back the audio, we were astonished to hear a clear, childlike voice answering our questions. She spoke of a terrible secret, a secret that had been buried with her for decades. Abigail's drowning had not been an accident, she had been murdered by someone she trusted. With this knowledge, we took our findings to the local police, who were initially skeptical but agreed to re-examine the case. It turned out that there was enough evidence to corroborate Abigail's story, and her murderer, an old man now, was finally brought to justice. After that night, no one ever reported seeing Abigail's spirit in the park again. We like to believe that we helped her find peace and that she's finally able to rest. But the experience left a lasting impact on us, a haunting reminder that sometimes the past refuses to stay buried. Story 3. My name is Jessica, and I'm a 16-year-old from a quiet suburb in the Pacific Northwest. Our town was surrounded by dense forests, and my friends and I loved exploring the woods and discovering hidden gems. One of our favorite spots was a secluded park tucked away deep in the forest, a place that felt almost magical. One summer night, my friends Chloe and Grace and I decided to have a late-night picnic in the park. We packed sandwiches, snacks, and flashlights and set out on our adventure. The hike to the park took about an hour, and by the time we arrived, it was nearly midnight. The park was bathed in moonlight, creating an enchanting atmosphere. We spread out our blanket near a small stream and enjoyed our picnic under the stars. After we finished eating, we decided to explore the park a bit before heading home. As we wandered along the winding paths, we stumbled upon a hidden grove filled with beautiful, glowing flowers. They seemed to emit a soft, otherworldly light that was both mesmerizing and eerie. We couldn't resist the temptation to pick a few, and as we did, we heard a strange, melodic singing coming from deeper in the grove. Curiosity got the better of us, and we followed the sound, only to find a group of ethereal-looking girls dancing around a circle of mushrooms. They seemed to be from another time, their dresses flowing and hair adorned with the same glowing flowers we had picked. Their voices were hauntingly beautiful, and we couldn't look away. As we watched, one of the girls noticed us and stopped her dance. She beckoned us to join them, and despite our apprehension, we felt a strange compulsion to follow. We stepped into the circle, and as we did, we felt an overwhelming sense of euphoria. Time seemed to lose all meaning as we danced and sang with these mysterious girls. Suddenly, we heard a distant ringing, like a church bell tolling. The girls stopped and exchanged panicked glances. The spell was broken, and we realized with horror that the sun was beginning to rise. The girls vanished before our eyes, leaving us alone in the grove. We stumbled back to our blanket, our heads spinning and disoriented. When we checked our phones, we discovered that we had been in the park for nearly 24 hours. It felt like we had only been there for a couple of hours at most. We never spoke about that night again, too afraid of what we had encountered. We avoided the park and never dared to go back. We couldn't shake the feeling that we had stumbled upon something ancient and powerful, something that wasn't meant for human eyes. And we couldn't help but wonder what might have happened if we had stayed in that circle, dancing with those enigmatic girls until the end of time.